Do you know that sometimes silence whispers secrets that words fail to express? In today's exploration, we venture into the silent corridors of human emotions to unearth an intriguing aspect of romantic dynamics: the impact of silence on a woman's feelings. It's a curious intersection where absence and presence dance together, often leaving us wondering, does silence make her heart grow fonder, or does it carve a gap too vast to bridge? Stoicism, with its rich teachings on self-mastery and emotional regulation, provides a unique framework to dissect this phenomenon. This philosophy encourages us not just to speak less, but to listen more, and to let our actions resonate louder than our words. By embracing silence, we may find that it has the power to deepen longing, enhance mystique, and strengthen bonds in unexpected ways. Join us as we delve into whether stepping back in silence can pull someone closer emotionally or push them away. We'll uncover insights from Stoic principles that help us understand the balance between presence and absence in fostering deep connections. If you're intrigued by how ancient wisdom can address modern-day relationship queries, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Now, let's begin. Number 1. The power of silence in relationships. Imagine this scenario. You're in a relationship, and things seem to be moving at the pace of a fast-flowing river. Constant communication, rapid responses, and no room for quiet. But here's a question. What happens when you stop responding immediately? When you introduce a little space into the relationship? Silence, though often misunderstood, holds incredible power. It might feel counterintuitive in a world that pushes us to always stay connected, to constantly communicate. But that's exactly why it's so effective. Silence creates something that words can't: space. And within that space lies the opportunity for reflection, longing, and curiosity to grow. In a relationship, silence can be like a breath of fresh air. It gives both of you time to think, to reflect on your feelings, and to miss each other. You see, the absence of constant chatter allows your presence to become more impactful. When you step back and let silence do its work, you give the other person a chance to remember why they value you. It's within that quiet that interest starts to rekindle, where curiosity begins to build. That silence makes her wonder, what is he up to? Why hasn't he reached out? And just like that, you become a thought that lingers in her mind, sparking the feeling of missing you. Now, let's look at this through the lens of Stoicism. The Stoics believe deeply in self-control, in mastering one's emotions rather than being ruled by them. Silence, in this case, is a form of control. It's not about playing games or using manipulation. It's about understanding when to speak and when to hold back. It's about realizing that constant communication is not always necessary, and that sometimes stepping back can bring more clarity to the relationship. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example. He wrote extensively about restraint and the power of inner strength. In the same way, when you hold back from always being the first to text or call, you show emotional maturity. You demonstrate that you are not governed by impulsive desires, but by thoughtful decisions. Silence, then, is an act of self-mastery. It says, I don't need to fill every moment with words to prove my value. My actions, my presence, speak louder. And in doing so, you allow the other person to appreciate the space you've created. Think about it like this. When you're constantly available, you become predictable, and there's little room for excitement or curiosity. But when you introduce silence, purposeful silence, it shakes things up. It gives her time to wonder, to think, and ultimately, to miss you. You're not forcing the feeling. You're simply allowing it to grow in the natural space that silence provides. A real-life example of this might be a couple who texts each other all day, every day. At first, it's exciting, but after a while, it becomes routine, even mundane. But then, one person pulls back, not in a dramatic, distant way, but just enough to create space. Suddenly, the lack of constant messaging feels noticeable. The silence isn't a void, it's a pause. And in that pause, thoughts of, "Why haven't I heard from him?" and "I wonder what he's doing," start to take over. That's the power of silence. Silence, when used with intention and self-control, creates an opportunity for the other person to miss you. It's not about withdrawing affection or playing games. It's about knowing that you don't have to be present all the time to be valued. By giving her time and space, you allow her to reflect on the moments you've shared, the qualities that make you unique, and the reasons she appreciates you. So, the next time you're tempted to send that extra message or fill the silence with words, consider the impact of holding back. Sometimes, the strongest connection is built not through constant communication, but through the thoughtful use of silence. And that's when the magic happens. Number 2, absence and emotional connection. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that sometimes, the less you're around, the more people think about you? It's like that old saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. There's real wisdom in those words, especially when it comes to relationships. Think about it for a moment. When you're always there, constantly texting, calling, or messaging, your presence becomes routine, almost expected. But when you introduce a bit of distance, something interesting happens. Your absence becomes noticeable. And it's within that space where true emotional connection can begin to deepen. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate someone's feelings. In fact, that approach will only backfire in the long run. What I'm talking about here is the intentional use of silence, the kind that is grounded in self-awareness and emotional maturity, the kind of silence that creates space for both of you to breathe, reflect, and recognize the value of each other's presence. Let's dive deeper into this idea. When you're constantly available, your presence can start to lose its impact. It's human nature to take things for granted when they're always right in front of us. But when you step back, even just a little, you give the other person the chance to feel your absence. And in that absence, something magical happens. They begin to miss you. Thoughts like, "Why haven't I heard from him today?" or "I wonder what he's up to," start to creep into their mind. This isn't manipulation. It's simply allowing space for someone to recognize your worth. Imagine a couple that talks every day, texts each other constantly, and stays connected 24/7. At first, it feels great. You're building a bond, creating memories, and enjoying each other's company. But over time, that constant communication can start to feel a little routine, maybe even a little overwhelming. Now, picture what happens when one person steps back a bit, not in a cold or distant way, but with purpose. They take a day or two to focus on themselves, giving the other person some space. Suddenly, the absence is felt. The routine has been broken, and now thoughts like, "Why am I thinking about him so much?" or "I miss our conversations," begin to surface. This is the emotional connection strengthening in your absence. What's important here is that this silence must be intentional. It's not about ghosting or making someone feel ignored. It's about recognizing the value of distance in creating emotional depth. When used wisely, silence gives her the space to realize just how much she appreciates your presence. It's the absence that often highlights the importance of what we have. And in relationships, this can be a powerful tool to deepen the emotional bond. In Stoic philosophy, there's an idea of temperance, which is the practice of self-restraint and moderation. When applied to relationships, this means knowing when to engage and when to step back, when to be present, and when to let silence do the talking. The key is balance. You don't need to be constantly available to show that you care. In fact, sometimes, showing that you're comfortable with silence, with giving space, demonstrates a level of confidence and self-assuredness that is incredibly attractive. So, the next time you find yourself reaching for your phone to send that text, ask yourself, is now the right time, or should I let silence do the work for me? Sometimes, the most powerful connections are built not through words, but through absence. It's in the quiet moments, the pauses between conversations, where the heart truly has time to grow fonder. By giving her the time to miss you, you're allowing her to truly appreciate your presence. And in doing so, the emotional connection between you grows even stronger. Now, take a moment to think about your relationships. Have you noticed how space and silence can sometimes bring you closer to someone? How does this idea of intentional distance align with your experiences or challenge your current perspective? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Share your experiences, or if this message truly resonates with you, simply type, "Silence speaks louder than words," to show that you're embracing the value of intentional absence. Let's keep the conversation going. Number 3. Self-control. Imagine this. You're in a relationship, and the urge to text, to call, to constantly check in with your partner starts to creep in. It's a feeling most of us know well. The need to stay connected, to hear from them, to make sure everything is going well. But what if I told you that sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to do nothing? That's right. Choosing silence, holding back, and embracing self-control can actually make you more attractive and deepen the emotional connection in your relationship. How? Because it's not about games, it's about demonstrating strength. And this is where Stoicism comes in, teaching us the art of self-control. One of the core principles of Stoicism is mastering your emotions rather than letting them master you. And in the context of modern relationships, this becomes incredibly relevant. Let's face it, when you're constantly reaching out, texting, calling, or always available, it can come off as needy or insecure, even if your intentions are pure. But when you learn to control those impulses, when you resist the urge to always communicate, you're showing something much deeper: emotional discipline. And this kind of self-control sets you apart from the crowd. Think about it. How many people in relationships feel the need to constantly check in, to seek validation through texts or social media? It's so common, it's almost expected. But what happens when you choose to hold back? When you decide to give your partner space, not because you don't care, but because you have the emotional maturity to let things breathe? That's the kind of self-control that not only gets noticed, but also leaves a lasting impression. Let's say you've just had a great date or a meaningful conversation with your partner. Naturally, you want to keep that connection going. You feel the urge to text them right away, to continue the conversation, to let them know you're thinking of them. But instead, you take a step back. You don't send that impulsive text. You choose silence. You allow them time to reflect on the time you spent together, to think about you without your constant presence. What you're doing here is giving them the space to miss you. And trust me, that's powerful. From a Stoic perspective, this self-control is the foundation of a balanced and fulfilling life. In relationships, we can't control how someone feels about us, but we can control how we respond. And sometimes, The best response is no response at all. By choosing silence over impulsive communication, you're showing that you're not ruled by insecurity or the need for constant reassurance. You're grounded, confident, and self-assured. And that's the kind of emotional maturity that people are drawn to. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often spoke about the importance of self-discipline. He believed that true strength lies in controlling our desires and impulses. In relationships, this translates to being able to resist the urge to always be in touch, to always be present, and instead, allowing things to unfold naturally. By doing this, you're not only elevating your own dignity, but also showing your partner that you're someone who can be relied on for emotional stability. In a world that moves at a fast pace, where communication is constant and overwhelming, self-control is a rare quality. It's the ability to step back, to breathe, and to allow space for reflection. And when you apply this to your relationships, you become someone who stands out. Someone who doesn't need to fill the silence, but instead uses it as a tool to build emotional depth. Number 4. The power of mystery. Have you ever noticed how the things we can't fully figure out tend to capture our attention the most? There's something about mystery that pulls us in, makes us curious, and leaves us wanting more. Now, imagine applying this concept to relationships. What if, instead of always being readily available, you allowed a little bit of mystery to work in your favor? Not by playing mind games, but by simply embracing the power of silence. Silence, when used intentionally, can create that sense of curiosity, that intrigue, that makes someone think about you long after the conversation has ended. Think about it. When you're always accessible, when you're always texting back immediately or constantly sharing every detail of your day, you become predictable. And while predictability has its place in creating a sense of security, it can also reduce the excitement, the element of surprise, that makes relationships so compelling. That's where the power of mystery comes in. Let's break it down. Imagine you've had a great interaction with a woman. Maybe it was a fantastic date or a deep conversation over the phone. Now, most people would feel the urge to keep that momentum going by texting the next morning or staying in constant contact. But what if, instead of doing that, you allow some silence to settle in? Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're giving her time to think about you, to reflect on the connection you shared. In that silence, curiosity starts to build. She starts to wonder, what's he doing? Why hasn't he texted yet? Is he thinking about me? So, the next time you find yourself wanting to send that immediate text or share every detail of your day, pause for a moment. Consider the power of mystery. Think about how silence can work in your favor, how it can create space for her to think about you, to wonder about you, and to miss you. It's not about withholding affection. It's about letting the natural rhythm of curiosity and desire take its course. As we reflect on the power of mystery and how it plays into attraction, take a moment to think about your own experiences. Have there been times when a little silence or unpredictability sparked curiosity and made someone linger in your thoughts? How did that impact the connection? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What are your personal experiences with balancing mystery and openness in relationships? Feel free to share them in the comments below, and let's explore how we can apply these insights to real-life dynamics. Your reflections might just inspire someone else. Number 5. Emotional strength through silence. When was the last time you really sat in silence? Not just the absence of noise, but true silence where you weren't scrolling through your phone, texting, or distracting yourself with constant communication. It's rare these days, isn't it? We live in a world where being constantly connected is the norm, where every quiet moment is quickly filled with something. But what if I told you that silence, that space you create by not always reaching out or replying instantly, isn't just powerful for making someone miss you? It's also one of the most important tools you can use to build your own emotional strength. You see, silence isn't just a strategy to spark curiosity or create mystery. It's also a practice that builds resilience, self-control, and confidence. And that, my friend, is what Stoicism is all about. At its core, Stoicism teaches us to focus on the things we can control: our thoughts, our reactions, and our actions. We can't control how someone feels about us, how they respond to our absence, or even whether they miss us. But what we can control is how we show up for ourselves, how we use silence to become stronger, more self-assured, and emotionally grounded. Think about it this way. When you're constantly texting, calling, or seeking validation from someone else, you're relying on external factors for your sense of worth. You're looking to someone else to fill that need for attention, affection, or reassurance. But when you choose silence, when you intentionally step back and let the space between you and the other person grow, you're giving yourself the opportunity to rely on yourself for that emotional fulfillment. You're building emotional strength from the inside out. In those moments of silence, you're not just making space for her to miss you. You're also making space for yourself to become stronger. You learn to be comfortable with your own company, to sit with your thoughts without needing someone else to validate them. That's where true emotional resilience is born. And when you become resilient, when you're no longer dependent on someone else for your sense of self-worth, you radiate a kind of confidence that's incredibly attractive. It's the kind of self-assuredness that people notice, that draws them in, because it shows you're someone who doesn't need constant validation. You're secure in who you are. Let's take an example. You're in the early stages of dating someone, and after a few great dates, there's a lull in communication. Instead of reaching out immediately to fill that silence, you take a step back. You use that quiet time to focus on yourself, your goals, your interests, your personal growth. Maybe you hit the gym, read a book, or spend time with friends. You're not ignoring her, but you're also not relying on constant communication to feel secure in the relationship. What happens? You've given her space to think about you, to wonder why you haven't reached out. But more importantly, you've given yourself the time to strengthen your emotional foundation. That confidence, that ability to be comfortable in the silence, speaks volumes about your character. This is what Stoicism teaches us. True strength comes from within. By practicing silence, you're not just using it as a tool to make her miss you. You're using it to build your own emotional resilience. You're learning that your worth doesn't come from someone else's attention or affection. It comes from within you. And that inner strength is what makes you stand out. Emotional maturity is incredibly attractive. When you're able to sit in silence, to be comfortable without needing constant validation, you're showing that you're in control of your emotions. You're not driven by insecurity or the need to always be in touch. Instead, you're grounded, confident, and self-assured. This kind of emotional strength is rare, and it's something that will naturally draw people towards you. In conclusion, silence is more than just a way to create mystery or make someone miss you. It's a powerful tool for your own emotional growth. By embracing moments of quiet, by choosing to be still rather than reacting impulsively, you're building emotional resilience. You're learning to be comfortable with who you are, and in doing so, you're becoming more attractive, not just to others, but to yourself. Number 6. Avoiding neediness. Let's face it, neediness is one of the biggest turnoffs in any relationship. When you're constantly chasing after someone's attention, always needing reassurance, or seeking approval through endless texts and calls, it sends a message that you're not secure in who you are. And that insecurity can push people away faster than you think. On the flip side, when you learn to embrace silence, to step back and avoid that knee-jerk reaction to always communicate, you start to show something far more attractive: confidence. Think about it. How much more appealing is someone who doesn't constantly need validation? Someone who's not always looking for approval, but is comfortable in their own skin. That's the power of silence. When you don't rush to text back immediately or constantly check in, you're showing that you're secure in who you are. You're showing that your sense of worth doesn't depend on someone else's attention. And that's an incredibly attractive quality. When you're constantly seeking reassurance, you're essentially putting your happiness in someone else's hands. You're saying, "I need you to validate me, to make me feel good about myself." But what happens when that validation isn't there? What happens when the other person doesn't respond as quickly as you'd like, or doesn't give you the attention you're craving? That's when insecurity creeps in, and neediness follows right behind. But when you embrace silence, when you step back and give both yourself and the other person room to breathe, you're taking control of your own emotional state. You're saying, "I don't need constant reassurance to feel good about myself. I'm secure in who I am." That kind of confidence, that kind of emotional independence is magnetic. It draws people in because it shows that you're not relying on them to make you feel whole. You already know your worth. Now, I'm not saying you should go silent for days or play hard to get. That's not the point. The point is to use silence as a way to avoid the trap of neediness, to show that you're confident enough to not always need to be in touch, that you're comfortable in your own skin without constant validation. This balance, this ability to give space while still being present, is what creates a healthy dynamic in any relationship. Imagine this scenario. You've been dating someone for a while, and things are going well. But instead of constantly texting them throughout the day or always being the first to reach out, you give them some space. You don't rush to fill the silence with conversation or seek reassurance through constant contact. What happens? You become more intriguing. They start to notice your calmness, your self-assuredness, and it draws them in. In that silence, you give them the chance to miss you, to think about you, and to appreciate the connection you share. This is the opposite of neediness. This is what emotional strength looks like, knowing that you don't need to chase validation because you're already enough. And that's a lesson we can all take from Stoicism. The Stoics believed in building inner strength by focusing on what we can control. And in relationships, that means controlling our own reactions, our own need for constant attention. By embracing silence, by stepping back when needed, you're showing that you're grounded in yourself. And that's the kind of confidence that makes you stand out in any relationship. By practicing silence, by not always rushing to respond or seek approval, you're showing that you're secure in who you are. You're embracing the Stoic idea of being grounded in yourself, independent of external validation, and that is what makes you dignified, calm, and confident. Trust me, that's the kind of energy that draws people towards you, and it's the foundation of a strong, healthy relationship. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you manage the balance between connection and independence? Feel free to share your experiences in the comments below. Or, if this message resonates with you, simply type Confidence in silence. Your insights could spark a deeper conversation for others navigating similar challenges. Let's keep the dialogue going. Number 7. Self-improvement. What do you do with your quiet moments? When the phone isn't buzzing, when there's no conversation to fill the air, how do you spend that time? Most people see silence as a void, an absence that needs to be filled with activity or communication. But here's the thing. Silence is actually one of the most powerful tools for personal growth. And when you use it wisely, it not only makes you more attractive, but it also helps you become a stronger, more confident version of yourself. Let's dive into why embracing silence for self-improvement is a game changer, not just in relationships, but in life. When we talk about the power of silence in relationships, the first thing that usually comes to mind is how it can make someone miss you, how it creates space for curiosity and desire to build. And while all of that is true, there's another side to silence that people often overlook. It's a time for you, a time to reflect, to grow, and to focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Think about it. When you're not constantly texting or calling, when you're not always chasing after someone's attention, you free up time and mental space to work on you. And that's where the magic happens. Silence isn't just about absence, it's about opportunity. It's a chance to pause, take a step back, and ask yourself important questions. What can I do better? How can I grow? What areas of my life need improvement? When you take the time to reflect on these things, you begin to see silence as a tool for personal transformation. Instead of filling the quiet moments with distractions, you can use them to cultivate new skills, improve your mindset, and work on the things that will make you a more confident, well-rounded person. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and one of the most important things we can control is our own growth. Silence is a perfect opportunity to practice this. Instead of reacting to every emotion, every impulse to connect, you learn to sit with the silence and use it as a tool for reflection. You ask yourself, what can I work on today to become a better person tomorrow? This mindset shift from seeking external validation to focusing on internal growth is a game changer. Imagine you're someone who's always wanted to learn a new skill, whether it's a hobby, a language, or improving your fitness. Instead of filling every silent moment with scrolling through social media or texting back and forth, you decide to dedicate that time to self-improvement. You use the quiet to read, to learn, to hit the gym, or to practice something that adds value to your life. Not only does this make you feel more accomplished and confident, but it also naturally makes you more intriguing to others. When you're constantly improving yourself, you radiate a sense of purpose and drive that is incredibly attractive. And here's the best part. When you're focused on your own growth, you don't feel the same need to chase after someone else's attention. You're not constantly looking for validation because you're busy working on yourself. That's what makes silence so powerful. It shifts the focus from seeking approval to building your own strength, resilience, and confidence. And that's exactly what Stoicism encourages us to do. The Stoics believed that true happiness comes from within, from mastering your own mind and actions, not from external sources of validation. The next time you find yourself in a moment of silence, whether it's after a great date or during a quiet day when communication is low, ask yourself, how can I use this time to grow? Instead of seeing silence as a void, see it as an opportunity. It's your chance to reflect on what's going well in your life, what needs improvement, and how you can continue to evolve. That's what makes silence so powerful. It's not just about making her miss you, it's about becoming the best version of yourself. So, the next time you're tempted to fill the silence with words, take a step back. Use that time to invest in yourself, to improve, and to become the kind of person who doesn't just wait for someone to miss them, but the kind of person who's worth missing. Number 8. Balance is key. Let me paint a picture for you. You're in the middle of building a connection with someone, and everything is going great. You've had some amazing conversations, maybe even shared a few special moments. But now, you want to make sure she keeps thinking about you when you're not around. You've heard about the power of silence, the idea that stepping back a bit, giving her space, can make her miss you. And it's true. Silence can be a powerful tool. But here's where many people go wrong. They overdo it. They lean too far into silence and end up creating a distance that pushes someone away rather than drawing them closer. So, how do you find that sweet spot? That's where balance comes in. Just like in most areas of life, balance is key. Too much of anything, even something as powerful as silence, can backfire. If you're always distant, if you completely withdraw and don't engage, it can create confusion and emotional disconnection. She might start to think you're uninterested, or even lose that spark of curiosity altogether. That's why it's so important to learn when to step back and when to lean in, when to let silence do the talking, and when to break it with meaningful communication. Think about it like walking a tightrope. On one side, you've got too much communication, constant texting, always being available, and not giving any room for mystery or reflection. On the other side, you've got too much silence, where your absence feels more like neglect than intrigue. The trick is to find that perfect balance in the middle, where you're giving enough space for her to miss you, but not so much that she feels disconnected or starts questioning your interest. Silence is a tool, not a wall. It's meant to create space, not distance. And knowing when to re-engage is just as important as knowing when to pull back. It's not about bombarding her with texts, but about reaching out at the right time, showing that you're still interested while maintaining that aura of confidence and self-assuredness. That's what makes you stand out. Now, let's look at this idea through the lens of Stoicism. The Stoics believed in moderation, in avoiding extremes and finding balance in all aspects of life. Whether it's emotions, desires, or even communication, the key is to find the middle ground. In relationships, this means learning how to use silence effectively without overusing it. It's about practicing restraint without becoming distant, about showing interest without becoming needy. Stoicism teaches us that self-control is essential, but so is wisdom in knowing when to act and when to hold back. Consider a musician playing a piece of music. The notes themselves are important, but the pauses between those notes, the moments of silence, are just as crucial. Without those pauses, the music would lose its rhythm, its depth. In the same way, silence in a relationship adds rhythm and depth. But if the silence goes on too long, the music stops, and what was once a beautiful melody becomes awkward or disconnected. You want to keep the music going, and that means knowing when to play the next note, when to reach out and re-engage. Let's talk about why balance is so attractive. When you can master the art of balancing silence and communication, you show that you're not dependent on constant interaction to feel secure. You're comfortable enough with yourself to give space without feeling anxious or worried. That kind of confidence is magnetic. It shows that you're someone who respects not only the other person's need for space, but also your own. You're not playing games. You're creating a healthy dynamic that's rooted in mutual respect and emotional maturity. And here's the thing. When you find that balance, it makes your moments of communication more meaningful. If you're always talking, always texting, those interactions can start to feel routine or even mundane. But when you strategically use silence, those moments when you do engage become more significant. She's more likely to pay attention, to appreciate the conversation, because it's not constant. It's special. It's a balance between presence and absence, between silence and connection. So, how do you know when to break the silence and re-engage? It's all about listening. Listening to the flow of the relationship, paying attention to her cues, and trusting your intuition. If you feel like the silence has done its work, that it's created enough space for curiosity to build, then that's your cue to reach out. Send a thoughtful message, engage in a meaningful conversation, and show that you're still there, still interested. This balance keeps the connection alive and healthy. By mastering the balance between silence and engagement, you not only make her miss you, but also build a connection that's rooted in confidence, respect, and emotional maturity. And that, my friend, is the secret to keeping the spark alive. Thank you for joining us on this insightful journey into the silent corridors of romantic dynamics. Today, we explored how silence can play a pivotal role in deepening connections and sparking curiosity within relationships. From understanding the power of absence to appreciating the Stoic practice of self-control, we've uncovered that silence isn't just a lack of words. It's a profound communicator in its own right. As we wrap up, I invite you to reflect on how you might integrate these lessons into your own relationships. Could embracing silence bring a new depth to your interactions? How might Stoic wisdom help you balance presence and absence to foster stronger bonds? If you found today's discussion enlightening, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more thought-provoking content. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you found silence to be a powerful tool in your relationships? Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most meaningful messages are conveyed not through words, but through the eloquent silence between them.